The house was always quiet after 10. It was a deep, heavy quiet that pressed down on you. I usually liked it, my time alone with my thoughts. The old house on Willow Creek Lane had its own sounds, the creak of wood, the hum of the fridge, a distant train. These were the sounds of home, reassuring in their normalcy. But tonight, the quiet felt different, watchful, tense, like the air before a storm. I sat in the living room, a book open on my lap, the only light a small lamp beside me. Shadows clung to the corners, thick and unmoving. I tried to read, but my eyes kept scanning the darkness, expecting someone to step out. I was alone. Mark was away for days yet. The silence felt like a stranger. A floorboard creaked upstairs, a quick, sharp sound, not the usual groan. I held my breath, listening, heart pounding. Nothing followed. The silence returned, heavier than before. I closed my book, telling myself I was tired, imagining things. I decided to make tea, hoping the routine would calm me. I stood, feeling the lamp's circle of light shrink as the shadows stretched closer. I took a deep breath and stepped into the cool darkness of the hallway toward the kitchen. The house seemed to hold its breath with me. I told myself it was just another night, but I knew it wasn't. The kitchen was colder than the rest of the house. I flicked on the light, grateful as the shadows retreated. I filled the kettle, trying to focus on the mundane mail, dish towel, grocery list. The kettle whistled, sharp and jarring. As I poured water into my mug, I heard it, a faint whisper from the main staircase. I froze, mug in hand, blood running cold. No wind tonight. The air was still. The sound was clear, close, a soft shh, like a warning. I set the mug down, hand trembling. Old houses make noises, I told myself, but this was a voice. I crept to the hallway entrance, staring at the staircase vanishing into darkness. I listened, breath shallow. Shh. Again from the top of the stairs, a child's whisper. My heart hammered. There were no children here. I wanted to call out, but fear closed my throat. I felt a cold dread spreading through me. I was not alone. Something was upstairs, waiting in the dark. It was watching me. The whisper was a warning, a command to be silent. I obeyed, rooted in place. The house seemed to listen too. I clung to the light, afraid to move. The silence pressed in. I didn't go upstairs. I couldn't. I backed into the living room, returning to the lamp's small island of light. I sat, arms wrapped around myself, the whisper echoing in my ears. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? A whisper? A feeling? The house was silent, but the fear was real, a cold knot in my chest. Then I saw it, a shadow flickering at the edge of my vision. In the hallway, a shape moved, darker than the other shadows, tall and thin, featureless. It glided silently toward the kitchen, not noticing me. I was paralyzed, unable to scream or move. The shadow disappeared into the kitchen. My mind reeled. This wasn't a trick of the light. The air grew colder, a sense of wrongness settling over me. The house was no longer just creaking and whispering. It was occupied. Something was here with me, something that didn't belong. I sat frozen, listening to the silence. The darkness felt alive. I knew I was being watched. I was not safe. The house was no longer mine. I waited, breathless, for what would come next. The night stretched on. After the shadow vanished into the kitchen, I stayed frozen. My phone was on the kitchen counter, past the spot where the shadow had been. I had to get out, but the thought of crossing that darkness was terrifying. I decided to run for it, grab my phone, my keys, and leave. I counted to 3, then bolted down the hallway. As I passed the spot, the air turned ice cold, a wall of unnatural chill. I stumbled into the kitchen, gasping, the cold clinging to my skin. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and snatched my keys from the hook. I unlocked the back door, desperate for escape, but I stopped in the doorway, dread rooting me in place. Something held me back, not a force, but a feeling. I looked back. The kitchen was empty, but the cold lingered. I knew leaving wouldn't solve anything. It was tied to this house, and now to me. I closed the door, locking myself in. I leaned against the wood, heart pounding. The house felt like a trap. I was no longer sure what was outside or in. I returned to the living room, the only place that felt remotely safe. The cold spot was gone, but the sense of being watched remained. I sat, knees to chest, listening to the silence. The house waited with me. I was trapped. I heard a soft click from upstairs, a door latch, the spare bedroom at the end of the hall. We always kept it closed. The sound came again. Click, then a low groan as the door swung open. I knew that door was shut before bed. Why that room? It was just boxes and old furniture. Maybe it wasn't what was in the room that mattered, but the room itself. The real estate agent had been vague about the house's history. An old family lived here for a long time, she'd said. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to block out the images forming in my mind, but I could almost see the dark, empty doorway upstairs waiting. The house felt ancient, secretive. I stayed perfectly still, listening. The silence was thick, expectant. I imagined the door slowly swinging open into darkness. Something was inviting me in, or daring me to come closer. I felt the pull of the unknown. I was afraid, but I had to know. The house demanded it. I stood, heart pounding, and faced the stairs. The night was far from over. I couldn't sit still anymore. I had to see. I climbed the stairs, each step a battle against fear. At the top, the hallway was a tunnel of darkness. The open door to the spare room drank in the little light. I crept forward, heart pounding. On the floor outside the door, a piece of paper, a child's drawing. I knelt, hand trembling, and picked it up. Crayon figures, a smiling family, sun overhead, but behind them, a tall, faceless black shape with spindly arms. The shadow from the hallway. At the bottom, in a child's scrawl, "He wants a new family." Nausea washed over me. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a story, a warning. The house had a memory, and it was reaching out. I stared at the drawing, unable to look away. The past and present blurred. I was part of the story now. The house had chosen me. I backed away, heart racing. I dropped the drawing and ran, not caring about noise. Down the hall, down the stairs, back to the living room circle of light. I stood, panting, mind racing. The drawing was a message, a threat. It wanted a new family. It wanted me. The house felt like a trap, the hunter closing in. I backed toward the window, desperate for a glimpse of the outside world. I pulled back the curtain. The street was empty, a single streetlight glowing. For a moment, relief. Everything out there was normal. Then I saw it. A face at the window. Pale, thin, with empty black eyes and a straight, unnatural mouth. Not human. The face of the shadow. It stared at me, cold and unblinking. It had been outside, watching. Now it was here. I stumbled back, heart in my throat. The boundary between inside and out was gone. The house was no longer a refuge. I was surrounded. The face vanished, but its gaze lingered. I was not alone. I screamed, stumbling away from the window. The face was gone, but terror remained. I curled into a corner, trapped. The whispers, the shadow, the cold. Just a prelude. The drawing made it clear. It wanted a family. That's when the scratching started. Inside the walls. Not rats, but something desperate, moving quickly around the room. Scratch, 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 everywhere at once. The house vibrated with its movement. The sound grew louder, more frantic, concentrating on one spot. The wall across from me, near the hallway. Scratch, scrape, scratch. It was digging, trying to get out. I stared, horrified, as a crack appeared in the plaster. The scratching was right there. The house was alive with it. I was surrounded, nowhere to run. The thing in the walls wanted out. I pressed myself against the floor, praying for morning. The night pressed in, relentless. The scratching stopped. Silence returned, more terrifying than before. I stared at the crack in the wall, waiting for something to burst through. Nothing happened. The night dragged on. Slowly dawn crept in, shadows retreating. The house looked normal again, but the fear lingered. I stood, exhausted, and walked toward the kitchen. Passing the hallway mirror, I glanced at my reflection. I saw a pale, haunted woman. Me, but not me. In the mirror, my reflection smiled, a wide, unnatural grin. My eyes were black and empty like the face in the window. My reflection's hand lifted and waved. The whisper came, not from the stairs, but from the mirror. From my own lips, but not my voice. It was a child's voice. "We're a family now." I stared, frozen, as the reflection grinned wider. The house was quiet, but I knew it was not over. I was part of it now. The story would continue. The house had claimed me. The morning light felt cold. The mirror waited, and the house was listening.